Namaste and welcome to the Bharat Varta podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. ONDC, or Open Network for Digital Commerce, is set to transform e-commerce in India. And to understand more about this innovative initiative and its impact, we have a couple of very special guests. Mr. T. Koshy is the CEO of ONDC. He focuses on building digital solutions to population scale problems. He has earlier been a senior exec at NSDL and Ernst& Young. Welcome to Bharat Varta, sir. Joining him in conversation, we have Nikhil Kumar, who is the co-founder and chief evangelist at Setu. Nikhil was earlier with the iSPIRT Foundation, where he worked on building a developer ecosystem for UPI and GSTN. Welcome back, Nikhil. Great to have you. So there's a lot for us to discuss today, and I'm really excited for our conversation. But maybe to set the context, we can begin with you, Mr. Koshy. If you can describe the circumstances leading to setting up ONDC, what was the background and what led up to it, that would be amazing.
ONDC came up as an initiative, the Ministry of Commerce, DPIIT. When the pandemic hit our country really badly, there had been a concern about how to reach goods and services, essential services to people, and access to the markets both by the sellers and buyers. Digital solution was considered as an idea, and a small team was set up to think about it. And as they're working on it, while they looked at many of the short-term solutions, they also came to the conclusion that there's a need to think about a long-term solution which will sort of make the whole digital commerce a much more common phenomena used by larger cross section of the society, both in terms of the merchants on one side and the buyers on the other side. So, steering committee was set up, and that sort of steering committee added more experts like Nandan and R.S. Sharma and Dilip Vaspe and Aravind and Anjali, and so on and so forth. They sat together and with the Minister DPIT Additional Secretary Anil Agarwal and evaluated what are the kind of possible options. So it was at the same time the team from Beacon was working on an idea of an open commerce where they had where they had done some work on the mobility side, and that come to the conclusion that that can be extended into many more areas from health to commerce and so on and so forth. So these two things happened parallel and they came together and they came to the conclusion that an idea of an open network is something that can be really revolutionary in terms of expanding the reach of digital commerce in India. That was the sort of serendipitous way in which the idea of ONDC came. And then, the advisory council proceeded with the idea and got initially a project team to look at it, and then they came to the conclusion that there's a strong implementation possibility. Discussed with the minister, Sri Piyush Goyal, who sort of endorsed and blessed it, and that's how we started the whole story last year.
Right. So, Nikhil, this sounds very transformative, but could you explain how ONDC works from a layman's perspective?
Yeah, sure. Roshan, the as Koshi was mentioning, the overall goal, which is very important to understand, is how do we increase digital commerce in the country. And when you think about this at a country scale like India, you have to think about large scale platforms to begin with, right? Because we're not talking about a small incremental shift in commerce. We are talking about a transformational or an orbit shift in commerce. So in order for you to think or leapfrog, we have to put on this idea of platform thinking, right? To how do we build platforms that basically make these orbit shifts happen in India. And we have had fair amount of success in India with this. As you know, we've spoken about this. Aadhaar was one such platform from an identity perspective. UPI was one such platform from a digital payments perspective. So very similarly, there has been this platform thinking around ONDC. As Koshi was mentioning, there was a team under Dr. Pramod Verma and Nandan and many others who were working on this protocol called the Beacon protocol, which basically forms the backbone of this platform. So what does this mean for you as Roshan as a consumer, and let's say Nikhil as a small business owner? Is today, if I'm a small business owner, if I have to sell my products, the way I would sell these products is, I would probably have a store. Let's say this is e-commerce 1.0 in India. And what happened is, once there was internet that came about, as a seller, I started selling my products on marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart. The reason I used to sell these on marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart, because they would solve access to customers, they would solve access to payment services, they would also solve logistics services. So in India, e-commerce 2.0 was all about selling on marketplaces. And then there was the D2C wave. So once payments got solved as a problem, once logistics got solved as a problem, now you as a small business owner, you could now start selling on your own website. So this is e-commerce 3.0. Now, what ONDC is trying to say is, hey, Nikhil, you already have these selling points. How about we give you a digital store or a footprint in 100 other applications and not just yours? So what this means for me as a small business owner is ONDC basically allows me to get onto this ONDC network, which is an open commerce network. And once I get onto this network, I become available on multiple other touch points where consumers come to buy, right? And it's not just restricted to my physical location. Say I could be an artist in Jodhpur, but I'm not restricted to my market only in Jodhpur, but not just my website, not just my marketplaces, but actually everywhere where consumers go to buy. This is on the seller side. On the buyer side, for you as Roshan, is Roshan today buys products, like I said, if you mirror the seller's world, you might go to a market and buy products, you might go to a marketplace and buy products, you might go to a website and buy products. Now, in India, as you know, we've had this transformational effect where there are many new applications that have become the choice of product for end consumers. For example, it could be payment applications that you may use every day, right? For example, could be a UPI app like phone pay, or it could be Google Pay, or it could be Paytm, and so on and so forth. Now, what if these payment applications could also become a point of purchase for you as Roshan? So today you anyway do a lot of commerce transactions without you realizing. For example, whenever you buy something on a website, you might complete the payment on phone pay. You might be doing your bill payments on phone pay. Now, what if you could also order products on PhonePay, and buy from multiple different sellers who are now coming onto the ONDC network. So this is what your life will look like as a consumer. You'll actually have more choices to buy from. You will have better payment methods. For example, apps like PhonePay and Google Pay will solve the payment method and customer support, etc., for you. And then you'll have a wide selection of items to choose from, or price quotes from various different sellers, who will essentially where you can choose as the buyer of who do I want to buy from, and what quantity, and so on and so forth.
So, Nikhil, I think couple of things you mentioned are important, right? One is that it's a network or a protocol and not a platform, right? So you could think of it as how HTTP, for example, is for content on the internet, or SMTP is for email. I think that's an important sort of a distinction to bring out, right? So, Mr. Koshi, the e-commerce category in India has been, 15, 20 years in the making. We have about 7-8% of penetration, and there have been a lot of investments from major e-commerce companies over the years, right? What is their response to what ONDC is effectively trying to do, which is open source plenty of these things, right? So do you see any pushback, or are they sort of embracing the innovation? What do you expect from them?
No, as of now, with all my interaction, they have not said any pushback or anything. And probably, if I think like him, because all my interaction had been very cordial with the existing players, the big and the small. But even if I look at from as an outsider looking at this, is that when you have something like an open commerce coming, which is increasing the competition, I will be a little uncomfortable, which is natural because that sort of reduce my opportunities. But on the other side, I'm sure that they will realize that such an initiative could significantly increase the total market that is there, and they will be able to continue to service to the specific segment of sellers and buyers who might be their loyal customers for a long time or may continue to do so. So the way I look at is, if you look at restaurant or hotel market, we have five-star chain, three-star chain, two-star chain, and so on and so forth. So in the digital commerce, I would say that currently that we have some servicing about 6-7 percentage of the seller side and about 1% of the buyer side is one such segment. But the market, what we are trying to do is to enhance the market and more and bring about all segments of players, both on the buyer side and the seller side. And that is something what is good for our country and for the people. So while there could be discomfort in the people when you are changing the established domain, I'm sure that they will realize the benefit of it and they will join the same. We saw the similar kind of thing when UPI was started. If you remember, we had established player. And if you also look at what it has done, is not it has not taken away much from the established player. It has only expanded the market maybe 10, 15 times, and that has been managed by such an open idea. And that's why we see fantastic interest that's coming from very many quarters to bring about more investment, because they believe that there's more opportunities for seller side platforms and buyer side platform, as against the current level of concentration that you see to about maybe two or three, maybe four at best, who sort of going to have 80, 90% of the market.
So at this point, do you have any ecosystem partners signed up on the for the network and the initiative?
Of course, yes. We have, as of now, there are 80, 90 of them under various, or around 100 of them under various stages of integration. So what we did is, some of the people who have already started integrating in the beginning, and we said we should come together and really set up a small network to demonstrate that it works in field. So one buyer application, five seller application, and one logistics application has come together, and we have sort of launched a limited scale pilot, if I call that, for participants who are in the network by invitation, because we are trying to test out how it works. Because as we heard earlier, it is a network, it is not a central system. And the network will succeed only the players are able to do it smoothly. And so we thought it was important to demonstrate that in the field. So, and we launched this limited kind of testing in 5 cities, which is Bangalore, Delhi, Bhopal, Coimbatore, and Shillong. All parts of India, big and small. And daily about around 100 transactions are done. And coming week, we will expect to extend that to a larger number of transactions and larger number of people who will be sort of testing it out.
Right, great. Nikhil, what do you think will be the impact on buyers and end consumers? We Aadhaar took about, I think, 9 years to reach billion, and then UPI took about 3 years or 4 years to get to a billion transactions. What do you see the impact on end consumers and buyers?
I think there are probably two large shifts that we may see in the consumer side. Yeah, so I think there'll be probably two major shifts in the consumer behavior, right? So number one, which is the most obvious, is I think there will be more number of people who will buy goods and services digitally, which is very simply the way payments transformation is happening in India, where people went from making payments using cash and check to actually making digital payments. Similarly, I think the number of buyers in India who will essentially start ordering or buying services and goods online will just increase. One way to look at this tailwind is how many people are going to be doing UPI transaction, because let's say if we qualify, the bare minimum necessity to do a digital transaction is to be able to make a digital payment. Uh, so essentially, if there are going to be, my estimation is in the next 5 years, we may have like at least 500 to 600 million people actively transacting on UPI in India. So, all of them will most likely be um, users who will start buying goods and services digitally. I think this is number one behavioral shift or major shift that we will see. The second one, I think, which is a very unique Indian problem, which is maybe convert more of the COD orders into digital payment transactions. So what ONDC is doing is it's basically unbundling the ecosystem to seller ecosystems and buyer ecosystems. And I think we can expect applications and innovation that will be done around the buyer side, which gives the guarantee to the buyer, which gives the trust to the buyer, so that there will be a lot of innovation also that will happen on that buyer side of payments. For example, by unbundling this, buyer apps can provide Roshan, for example, a better consumer durable loan to be able to buy something. You may be able to get a very product specific loan or a line from your bank or your lender to be able to buy. Or you will probably be using something like UPI, or you could even be innovating on the buyer side by having something called UPI auto pay, where Roshan can tell the buyer app saying, hey, I am giving you a payment instruction, it's a standing instruction, but hey, cut my money from my bank account only when the product is delivered. So there are these innovations that will probably happen by this unbundling. so that the seller apps or the seller ecosystem is focused on bringing more and more sellers on board. But on the other side, buyer apps will innovate on enabling more and more buyers on board. There are also some very interesting concepts that we hear from the ecosystem. You know, any the most exciting thing about building ecosystems is when people think about use cases which you have not thought about, which blows your mind, and you're like, oh, we never thought about it. We just wanted to build a network, but but somebody's actually, for example, someone's thinking about enabling group buying to happen. So there could be apps which are probably which could build group buying features for a specific cohort of people, which will enable them to get better prices, better discovery, and so on and so forth. So there is all sorts of innovation that could happen on the buyer side. And I'm most excited about the things that we don't know than the things that we know will happen.
Yeah, I think what UPI has done is it's made our internet penetration monetizable, right? And I think ONDC perhaps takes that couple of steps further in that regard. Mr. Koshi, if you look at the seller side, we've seen massive adoption post COVID, in terms of digital stores and whatnot. How do you expect this to take it to that next level in terms of adoption?
While you saw a significant increase in adoption, specifically when some, the way the adoptions, I will say in two ways. One is somebody has sort of joined some platforms, which essentially, even still, it is in 1 or 2%. And some people will shoot some other digital means like using a phone or a WhatsApp and so on and so forth as a messaging mechanism to reach across. But if you, but on the other side, the potential is really, really huge. As I said, it's only about a percentage or so. One of the challenges that used to be expressed by the various seller community was that the current, the system where we have only 2 or 3 large platforms and some of them expects that that the sellers will join as per the rules prescribed by the platforms. That means the central platforms decide how the business to be done, which may not be what very many people would like to sort of do that. And Secondly, they also have their own pricing mechanism, which may not be what is comfortable for everybody. So different people have different expectations, whereas the offers are only limited. Now, on the other side, and then if you want to have a broader cross section of buyers, they need to be there in multiple platforms, which is or adding into cost. Now, the ONDC is that they are creating a pool of buyers on one side, which is open to every seller. And when the pool is currently, probably the pool might have brought by this couple of platforms, might be a couple of 100 million. But on the other side, when the entities who have large number of digital consumers, not in the e-commerce side, but in the other side, for example, telco, fintech, banks, and so on and so forth. When they all bring their buyers onto the market, you're talking about a market as big as India's population, or who have some kind of access. In fact, one of our partners, in the sense, who's also an investor as well as somebody who's becoming our network participant, is CSC, Citizen Service Center, as you are aware. They have like presence in for more than 400,000 villages, and they would say that even for the people who do not have their own phones or computers to access, they will make an assisted buying a possibility. So when you have this large, almost a billion people coming onto the market, and the buyer and the sellers having a choice to reach across to the relevant segment of sellers at their own terms and condition, you are talking about a different paradigm. And in this different paradigm, as in the case of physical market, variety of people will come. In the current digital market, is paradigm is very limited. If you look at our physical market, you have a variety of people. Now, like I said earlier, from 5 star to 2 star to discount stores to premium stores and so on and so forth. So we will see all of them coming together in a healthy market here, which is digital now, which is where people are generally getting comfortable because life is moving digital in very many ways, not just in commerce, whether it is in payment, whether it is in government services, accessing government services, or in education or in health. The general usage of digital medium is increasing. And then the way I look at it is like as in the case of the physical market, variety of segments of buyers and sellers will come together without being restricted in any way of being a captive audience of any particular party. I mean, I think that's the biggest difference.
And also I think seller enablement as well, right? I mean, today we have plug and play framework to basically start a business on a weekend, right? I kind of expect this also to have, let's say, delivery partners or some other value added service partners and so on as well, right?
Yeah, that's true. See, when you say plug and play, it is actually plug and play into the specific model. Sorry, to the specific models of one or two available. Whereas being
Yeah.
now that this is protocolized, I would rather say there are a number of parties developing different kind of seller applications meeting the requirement of different segments, and those will all be available as a ready to be used application that is available in the market.
So Nikhil, just continuing on that thread, right? What are some of the applications that you expect people will build over it, and how will the integration with the broader India stack work?
Yeah, when Koshy was talking about it, I was just reminded of, if you remember Roshan, when we were growing up, one of the roles the government played in our lives, in terms of commerce, was to create these shopping complexes or shopping markets. For those of us in Bangalore, we remember that there used to be these BDA complexes, which used to be built by the Bangalore Development Authority, which used to be basically, in some sense, the physical equivalent of an open marketplace, right? Where it allowed sellers to come and sell. If you go to Jayanagar shopping complex, you'll see everything from clothes to fruits to vegetables to bras to whatnot. And or when we think about markets in Delhi like Chandni Chowk or Sarojini Market or so on, where there is all sorts of sellers who come and sell. And when Koshi was talking about ONDC, I was just reminded of that. In some sense, imagine if the person is now not restricted to just sell in Sarojini Market. What if you could get Sarojini Market on your application sitting here in Bangalore? Similarly, what if someone could get the Jayanagar shopping complex in somebody sitting in Bombay, and maybe somebody who's selling something in Assam, and that access is in like Chennai, right? And I think that's really the biggest power of this, because in taking these by government taking this lead by setting up something like ONDC, by bringing this standardization, it leads to network effects. Otherwise, the current marketplaces that are there today are more like closed loop systems, which
Yeah.
is like, hey, I will do the buyer side, I will do the seller side, so therefore this. But by unbundling and creating a network, you essentially have chances of massive network effects to happen, where there could be an app developer, in say in Tamil Nadu, who's just focus on digitizing rural shops or rural kirana shops in a specific area. There could be somebody like the example that I was talking about on crafts. There could be somebody just doing this in Banaras, where someone could probably just build a Banaras seller app for silk, and could probably onboard people who are selling saris and kurtas and whatnot. I think the two mental models of where we'll see innovation is on the buyer side as on the seller side. Now, to your question about what kind of apps will get built, I think the most exciting thing about this is that earlier, if you were to build an e-commerce company or a marketplace, you had to do all the hard work, the whole nine yards by yourself. You had to acquire the consumers, you had to acquire the sellers, you had to build a logistics business, you had to build a good payment experience, you had to build good dispute resolution, all of that stuff. Now, by essentially decentralizing this, by federating this, you now have more people who can do niche stuff really, really well. So I think what that will lead to is combinatorial innovation, right? For example, there could be an application that might build, billing plus payment collection via UPI, plus order management through ONDC, and tax filing through GST APIs, right? So think about a world where this seller who will come to the formal ecosystem, hopefully that ONDC will drive more commerce to these businesses, and the second order effect of this will be that more and more businesses are getting formalized. So if your revenues increase, so you will become a GST registered business, and therefore you will have, other benefits like access to formal credit, improve your margins by getting input tax credit, and so on and so forth, right? So I think, on the seller side it's going to be this. And when sellers orders are getting digitized, when their tax is getting digitized, now credit to these sellers will also get digitized. So initiatives like OKIN, which is aimed at enabling better credit, or more credit to SME business owners, will probably see OKIN as a sorry ONDC as a way to enable or use data from ONDC to do better underwriting and be able to provide formal credit. So I think that's the integration that will happen on the seller side, which is basically your formalization, your tax and accounting automation, better access to formal credit, easier reconciliation, and low cost payment collection through UPI. Beautifully, all things of India stack come in to basically make that Jodhpuri seller or that Banaras silk seller's life fully digital. And on the buyer side, like I said, there will be a neo banking experience of neo commerce, right? So the reason I'm using this is that we know you banking in a particular way, and then you had these UPI apps that deliver this neo banking payment experience for you. I think there will similarly be neo commerce. What I mean by that is there will be new ways of buying, where maybe Roshan could just open his app, a buying app, and talk in Kannada and say, I want a place of Uppit, or I want a plate of idli vada, and the app will search who are the idli vada sellers nearby you and say, hey Roshan, do you want to place an order? I think that's really the most exciting thing, about this, where people could do a lot of innovation. Like I said, I'm using the word neo-commerce because there will be a new way of buying buyer apps, which will have new ways of buying, which is not the way things are today, and it'll be 10x better than what it is. So I'm very excited about, on the consumer side as well, people will have access to credit, because what it does is it allows lenders to now do what we call as purpose based loans. For example, if Roshan is, let's say, technically you could also book a chowdhury for a wedding on ONDC, right? As Koshy was explaining, it's just not goods, it's also services. So technically a bank can even give you a loan to book catering service, or it could give you a loan to book a chowdhury, or it could even give you a loan to educational services can also be part of ONDC as per the spec in the future. So this allows what we call as purpose linked loans. And I think, as Koshi was saying, and I've heard him say this many times, that commerce is a very good proxy of the growth of a country's economy, right? Like,
Yeah.
what do you measure on? The measure of a country's growth is actually on commerce. One of the light bulb moments that happened to me a couple of months ago, and ever since I've been bugging and chasing Koshi on building on ONDC, is I realized that all things that we have been doing on India stack, whether it's identity, giving someone bank account and giving them credit. People, we used to say all roads lead to lending, but all roads of lending actually lead to commerce, if you really
Yeah.
think about it. So everything is actually a subset of commerce. Identity, payments, lending is actually to enable more and more business to happen in a country, right, at country scale. So if more business happens, then more the country grows, and more the faster our economy grows. So now it all makes sense on why we've been doing all these public digital platforms, and ONDC is the next logical step in India's public digital platform infrastructure work.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think also we'll probably see verticalized marketplaces or ecosystems emerge, right? So I can think of plenty. I mean, either on the agriculture side or elsewhere. I mean, this also improves formalization and gives an additional incentive for people to formalize as well. So overall, I mean, many different positives. Um, Mr. Koshi, what does the roadmap look like? What can we expect in the coming months and years?
No, in the coming one, I mean, like I said, our expectation is that we would see the market concentration significantly coming down. I mean, that's a big opportunity that you're seeing. What it means is larger participation from the buyer and sellers instead of concentrated participation. That's a long-term issue. So that we see that it's a journey. It's not an end in itself. But in a short term, we would see probably by August. We are going to see something like presence of ONDC in about 100 cities. And that's what I'm trying as a short-term target. And by the end of the year, maybe we present there and, practically almost all the cities and towns. So these are the kind of aggressive targets that we are trying to work on. And we sort of hope that that aggressive mindset that the whole participant network is showing today will help us to achieve this very very diversified and well dispersed market taking shape in the coming years.
Well, thank you so much again, Mr. Koshi, for joining us. Thank you, Nikhil, as well. I think India is really pioneering this whole tech-led policy making, which is really fantastic to see, and that too at our scale, right, which is billion plus. So, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roshan.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Bharat Varta podcast. If you want to see more content like this, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We started Bharat Varta to facilitate long form discussions on politics, policy, and culture. We don't necessarily endorse anything that was said in this episode. If you wish to offer us feedback, do reach out to us on social media. We are at Bharat Varta on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You could also get in touch with us on our website www.bharatvarta.in. The links are in the description below. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.